Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here, to be invited by Oslo Freedom Forum to have this dialogue. I'm from Hong Kong. I'm a documentary producer and also a journalist from Hong Kong. I actually met Mr. Wan in 2003. Back then, I was interviewing the AIDS village in China. I was filming the documentary film. What I can give you a brief background introduction. It was in the 90s the Henan provincial government encouraged the farmers to sell their blood, which resulted into a massive contraction of HIV and AIDS, and so this village was referred to as the AIDS village. And Mr. Wan founded the Aizhixing network, which is the predecessor of the Institute of Aizhixing Health Education, which is dedicated to the care for AIDS patients. So I would like to ask you, with the over 10 years of history, from 2002 and 2007, you've been arrested, you've been detained, you've also been invited to have a cup of tea. By that, they mean that this is not actually an invitation. This is something you cannot decline. You would have to report to the police station and to answer their questions, and that is what they mean by inviting you over for a cup of tea. So you've been very often hindered or held back. I think that's going to have a big impact on your work. How are you able to hold large activities? Well, yeah. When the police came, when I was under house arrest, I couldn't do anything because for that 1 week or two, you're just held at home. I was very anxious, and there's a lot of things I had to do, and you have to deal with the police. Sometimes you have to report to the courthouse, and you don't know what's going to happen. So that's actually going to be a huge impact on my work. And after the year 2006, we did not have any large conventions or meetings, because all the meetings were actually stopped by the police. Why 2006? What happened then? Well, basically, the Chinese government tightened the security controls. The Chinese government heightened its control over the NGOs or these rights-keeping groups. And also, that was the time when they were getting ready for the Olympics, so there was a lot of security measures. I was arrested by the end of 2006 because back then we were assisting the legal matters for those who contracted AIDS via the blood transfusion. We had a meeting for them, and it was stopped by the police. Back then, the police almost came to me on a weekly basis. Sometimes once or twice a week, the police came to me, and I was not able to be interviewed by reporters, and I couldn't hold any large meetings. Okay, after the 2006, were there any large-scale events? Well, actually, at the beginning of 2007, we were going to have a large international meeting for the human rights of homosexuals, but then this was intercepted. Back then, we invited activists from around the world, human rights activists to China, but then this was halted in 2008. During the Olympics, the organization actually closed down for almost 2 years. In January 2009, we held an internal meeting, and then the police came over and interrogated everyone and checked our IDs. And this organization has been around for 16 years, and just last year we wanted to have an anniversary, but then the police also came, which halted the anniversary celebration. And last year we also wanted to hold a conference for the health of sex workers, and which was also prosecuted by by the police department, and we were also the press was also notified not to report our stories. I know that last year you left China, you went with your family to the U.S., and now you reside in the U.S. What drove you to the States? Were you forced to leave? Well, actually, there were there was a circumstance when we couldn't hold any meetings, and also the sessions, the meetings I had with the police, and they were trying to investigate us. Within 6 months, and more than 10 departments actually came to us and harassed us. And their fire departments, the commerce department, and the publication department, and they were all trying to find trouble. And they did not allow me to go to give lectures at college. And the government also forbid the press to cover stories. I heard there's also tax investigations. Yes, that's right. Last year, technically they could imprison me for tax law violations. However, during 6 months of an investigation, they couldn't find any trouble, but then they asked for another investigation. I know that these measures were not only imposed on Aizhixing Institute of Health and Education, but also a lot of NGOs, for example, the Open Constitution Initiative or the Loving Source organization, they were also imposed, similar measures were imposed. Well, why was this a serious issue for you? Well, yeah, because the government does not allow these civil society or these NGOs to register, so we have to register as companies. So the donation that we received are kind of in a gray area, even though we are not obliged to pay tax on the donation. However, this could be also considered as a business income. So, for example, Ai Weiwei, the artist who got arrested, his company were also under tax investigation. And I know there is a organization or the law firm and who was received donation from Norwegian government, and the donation they received were also considered business revenue that needs to pay tax, and they were fined for more than 1 million RMB. So I guess a lot of you heard about Ai Weiwei, the artist who was arrested for more than a month, and we still have no news about him. And we heard only one time there's a newsletter from the government, and that deemed him as an economic criminal. And so that's how they sentenced him, or that's the reason they detained him. And back to the AIDS village, there was, back then, when I interviewed the AIDS village, I actually went there twice. And the farmer told me the reason they contracted the virus was because when they extract blood from your body, they just need the plasma, and they actually and then once they extracted the blood cells, and then they were transfused the blood back into your body, and each time they can make about 50 RMB. So a lot of people contracted the virus back then. And it was also very difficult to interview those farmers. I know that back then you posted an article where an article that holds Li Changchun accountable for these policy. Well, in Henan, at the village, more than 1,000 people got infected. That's more than 1/3 of the villagers. And over the course of 10 years, more than 200 people died of AIDS. And they're actually, this kind of a blood selling event occurred in more than 23 provinces. And Li Changchun, he was the Secretary General of Henan Province during the time it happened. So according to Chinese law, he should be held responsible for these results, for these consequences. And also, they did not publish the results. They're trying to cover it up. And it was also very oppressive to the scientists and to medical personnel who was working on this issue. They fired these doctors and also arrested the reporters. And also, a lot of these activists were under house arrest or supervision. So Li Changchun, he is now in charge of the press control in China. He works for the government and hold this very important position. And he was being very oppressive on the media coverage. And someone wrote a letter to Hu Jintao last year that Li Changchun should be prosecuted according to the Chinese law. And we posted this article on our website. And the website was closed this year in March. So you think that has something to do with the government? Yeah, the press office from Beijing city government, they made a few phone calls and telling us to delete this post. And I told them, if you want me to do that, please send us an informal notice instead of just making phone calls. So you think, okay, these two incidents are relevant. Yeah, we received phone calls on March 14th, asking us to delete this post, and I asked them to send us a notice in written form, but we never heard back from them again. So can you talk more about AIDS Village? Well, actually, from 2003, there's been some medical assistance to the villagers provided by the government. And the government has also strengthened the enforcement force, and they also set up a prison to detain those activists, and they threatened those more activists out there to put them in jail. And those who contracted the virus, some of them were sentenced while they were appealing to court, while they're suing the government. They were sent to prison. And there are some civic societies, and their activists, their members, are often taken away by the police. And when they're out there for interviews, there are also police who escort them. Well, just last year, I went there for an interview, and I got an email from the interviewees, and he told me that, well, the worst time is not over yet. However, we are now receiving more medical assistance, but people are still very sad and very depressed about this situation. Yeah, I think the government basically politically kidnapped these patients. They say, if you're not obedient, we will not give you medication. But if you are obedient, we'll provide you, we'll channel international assistance to you. And if people keep on rioting, they will even bring them to jail. We know that. What about this contaminated blood? Where did the blood go? Well, in China, a lot of those who have leukemia or they have other blood-related diseases, they receive this blood transfusion. They also contracted HIV and AIDS, and there were some of them were compensated by the government. Whereas in Henan province, a lot of those AIDS patients, when they sue the government asking for compensation, these cases were actually declined by the court. The court did not take up these cases. And so they have to go to Beijing to file a petition. However, a lot of them were put into black jail or under house arrest. So other than the AIDS issue, the public health issues in China, for example, these toxic milk powders events or this incident, a lot of these public health events were turned into a social stability issue. How do you view this issue? Well, the untransparent bureaucracy in China often hinders the well-being of the Chinese people. And when people start to protect their rights and take legal matter to resolve these issues, and they often face the threat from the government. The government would mobilize the police force, no matter just for the AIDS patients that are put under detention or house arrest. And other activists are also arrested. Last year in October, there is one written document, which is a suggestion for future policies. The Chinese government mentioned that in the next 5 years, they're going to invest more in the police force for stability maintenance. Last but not least, I would like to ask you, when the Chinese government, in the endeavor to create a stable society, what should they do? Well, the Chinese government is trying to set up a police society that would stake out on those who may pose potential threat to the society, and they want to supervise them to keep an eye on those people. And the Chinese government just recently announced that they would also supervise those who are mentally ill. So those who consult a psychiatrist may be listed, and the house visits will be paid by the police. So they actually deem these people, those mentally ill population, as a threat to the society. And they also have these policy to supervise or to monitor this roaming population, those who roam. There's a policy from the Beijing city government. So for every 100 homeless or these roaming population, there should be 5 that can supervise them. Thank you very much.